So today's project, as I hinted, has been influenced by the beach. So I'm going to be using today a Sarson's vinegar jar. So it's quite a bit taller than the jars we've been using previously. I'm also going to be using some gravel. So we've just come back from the New Forest and we had a scavenger hunt and wild art hunt, and it did invite us to find some small stones. So we went overboard and we have taken the whole contents of the gravel driveway of this particular house home with us, and I'm going to be using that as the basis for my flower arrangement. So I've got here a bowl of water and I'm going to put the pebbles into the water just to wash them off. They're a bit, we had to collect other stuff as well, and now I've done that and it's a bit like a horrible yucky soup in there, which I think I might just flick off the dead stuff. There's pine needles in here as well. So you don't need to do that bit. If you had gravel in your own drive or around the edge of the house, just a matter of picking the gravel up, and you may or not decide to clean it. And to sort of get the seasidey vibe, I've also gone foraging. So I should say, with both picking up the pebbles and foraging, you just need to be aware that, you know, following the countryside code, and is there a beach code as well? I'm not quite sure, but you're just really thinking about things you're collecting out in the wild, that I'm sure that it's perfectly acceptable to cut little bits and pieces of what you need. It's not acceptable to be damaging wildlife and nesting sites and stripping a whole area of bits and pieces. So what I've done, we went for a dog walk this morning. So we always have a Sunday morning dog walk as a family, and I have picked some bits and pieces, and I've tried to go with this sort of beachy vibe. So what I've got here are some asparagus fern I found on the side of a footpath. So I just cut half a stem of what was there. I thought that looked quite seasidey. And then this here, I'm not entirely sure what it is. It looks like cow parsley, but it's a bronzed colour. And this is, it's still in bud, so yet to come out, but it does look as if it's been dried. So I don't know if that's a good angle to show you. And then some yarrow, and I can see that I've got two bits of the white yarrow. One that is drooping, and I thought I'd put it in a glass of water when I came home, and possibly this stem wasn't actually in the bottom of the water, but don't worry about it if you've got droopy stuff, because on the whole it will recover. And you'll see these on the wayside and quite often dried out as well. And if you've got a garden, you may well have the ornamental variety of this at home, which is bright yellow, and it also does come in different colours as well. Now, as I'm here in Kent, we've got some hops. So not seasidey, but I thought it sort of went with that general sort of very simplistic theme of my planting, and also some clematis as well, wild clematis. So I've got those as my flowers. So just to show you really that you don't need lots of flowers to complete these projects. It's a matter of what you've got to hand. So if you have a beautiful garden, you can be picking like mad. Or if you want to buy stuff from the florist or from the supermarket, but if you just happen to find stuff on country walks, that's great as well. And the one thing I did find were these seed heads of the oil seed. So these are just left drying underneath a bit of a field that a farmer couldn't get to, and they're under a telegraph pole, so I just cut those down. So you just feel a bit of a twit walking home afterwards. But my advice is, going for a country walk, take a decent pair of scissors, because lots of these things you think, I'll just snap it off as I go. Actually, you're a bit tougher than they look. And if you're being super keen, I'd also take an elastic band. Sometimes you find the postman has left elastic bands and you drop them on the floor, and they're quite handy just to keep everything bundled together. And you can imagine dry flower arrangement, you just put those in a vase, Bob's your uncle, job done. You could go like that and pretend you bought them from IKEA. If you have spray paint, you could be spraying them different colours. So the world is your oyster. So we're just here to give you a few ideas for you to use that as a springboard to do something even more exciting. So with my pebbles, I have slushed off, while we're talking, the worst of the dirt. I'm just going to get, there's leaves and pine needles in here as well. So you would do this more carefully, and probably if I was doing this at home and nobody was home, I may well have put them in the washing up bowl and even put a bit of very liquid on them and then run them through the sieve. But my husband's indoors and he hates me using anything for flower arranging that is kitchen utensil based. So I have to pretend that I've used all my own stuff. Slightly worried because the back door's open. You might be hearing what I'm saying. So if I was at home, probably I would just have put this in a colander or a sieve and then run the water through it. Whereas now I've got to be quite clever about cleaning and putting the pebbles into my dish without getting too much of this rubbishy stuff here. But I have purloined a slotted spoon. So as I lift it out of the bowl, I can just get rid of the bits that I don't want. So when the pebbles are in water, they really do glisten. It's almost as if you find some special pebbles or shells on the beach that you could just put those in the jar and just have them. Don't even have any water in. Just a bit noisy. A collection. So I'm putting the pebbles into the jar, getting rid of the green bits that I don't want in here, and try not to spill too many on the table. And up to you whether you've just got a smattering of pebbles at the bottom or you want to come up really high. Now, if you're not close to the beach or don't have any access to pebbles, they are the kind of thing you can buy, but why buy them if you can purloin them for free? I did notice when we were in IKEA, going up to my mum and dad's earlier in the holidays, that they were selling decorative pebbles, and I'm sure that I used to have loads of decorative pebbles in my workshop, which I got rid of over the years. But you may find, if you're a charity shop fan, that you might find decorative pebbles boxed up in a charity shop, or even these sort of glass, they look like lozenges, but they're the same thing, little shiny glass pebbles, or even marbles. So we have, actually I could have used marbles, and that would have looked quite good with the beach theme actually. If you have loads of marbles at home, do the same job as well. So don't feel that you've got to putting more pressure on because you need to go out and get to the beach and find pebbles and all the rest of it. Find what you have, but you need to make sure whatever you're putting in the bottom of your jar weighs down. So I did think originally I could use a Lego for this, but of course the Lego would have floated. It would have, if it was heavyweight, it would have been okay. So it's whatever you can find and experiment, have fun with it. But if you've got a young family, it may be that you're still in the zone of collecting favourite pebbles when you walk along, whether that's on the forest path or at the beach, and you want something to do with them. So often you come home in your handbag and you've got 6 of the most beautiful pebbles in the world, and then you just dump them when you get home. So dump them in the vase and you can make them look decorative and pretty. So I'm going to get rid of, still got a few left in there. I daren't tip this over too far, but you can see how dirty that water was when I didn't think actually they were too bad. So I will throw that on the lawn later, because actually our lawn's not looking too bad at the moment, but the front garden is absolutely parched. So I might go out and put that on the front lawn or just ditch the water in the flower bed. So number 1 job, pebbles in the bottom of the vase. You then need to add water. So I've got a cup of water here. Easiest thing to do is to feed it through a funnel, and then you're not going to spill it anywhere. But if you're really careful, you'll just be able to do this freehand. And again, you decide how much water you want in here. And I've got a cup of water, that's what I'm going for. And now at this stage, it's almost like you've got an indoor fish tank. And I guess you could imagine little fishes doing that. Or perhaps you could do your decoupage and cut out little goldfish on here. And you could have a little look, little fishy look to your arrangement. So I'm going to be arranging my flowers into the pebbles to get them to stand upright. So trial and error really, as everything. So you need to make sure your pebbles are reasonably small and not absolutely massive. You need to sort of wiggle your stems down to the middle. So what I'm going to use, I'm going to try and do something quite tall. I'm not quite sure how much height I've got in that camera frame. So I'm going to start off with these dried oilseed stems. And if you're into rules, when you flower arrange, the rule is you have your stems at least 1.5 times the height of your container. So I've measured out, that's the height of the container. So that would be the height, and then half again up here. I should have done it the wrong other way around. Actually, that way around would have made more sense. So that's the height. that's 1 times higher, and then I can see a knobbly bit here. So that stem would be 1.5 times the height of the container. But you can go as high as you want, and I wouldn't get too stuck on the rules, because once you know there's rules to flower arranging, it feels like you're not part of the club. So I would say just do what you think looks really nice and go with it. But if you like a rule, 1.5 times. So I have put, oh, look at that. I have put that stem, oh, it's going to move in the breeze. I'm going to put it right solid in the middle. So that single stem is standing upright on its own, and the reason for that is that I've wedged it into those pebbles at the bottom. So I don't actually want my stem there, I want it towards the back. So what I am doing, I'm arranging this so I can see it. So I was standing here, this is my front of my vase, this is the back. So the first piece of raw material I put in at the back. Probably it's easier if I showed you with my cup. So I'm putting the first stem in towards the back of the cup, and then I'll come in and travel across to the front of the cup. So my first stem went in here, and then the next one's going to go towards the middle, then to the middle front, and then right at the front. And by that way, from the mouth of your vase, you're getting a depth of vision really, that you're not putting everything into the front of the vase. So if you were doing a bit of a cut and plonk, you'd have just got your vase, the flower stems together and gone like that, and they would just have ended up higgledy-piggledy. So I'm purposely working from the back to the front. So I've got my stem in there, and I think actually that I could come a little bit higher with my next stem. So I'm going to try and find a stem that looks higher. So this here is branched off. So if I cut off that side stem there, that's not quite high enough. But if I measure that one up against this one, I could cut it there, get rid of those side shoots. So I've managed to get lots of stems out of that one branch. So really tall at the back. Wiggle down. It's not playing ball. I'm going to move those pebbles around. So that goes down into pebbles. It's a nice sort of satisfying crunch. So nice and tall at the back, and then as you see it, number 1 at the back, number 2 in the middle, and I'm twisting it around for me. Number 3 is a bit lower, so I can measure that up. You can see what I'm doing there. Measure it, I've put it upside down because I don't want to damage the little flower heads there. And I'm going to cut off about 10 centimetres. Seed heads, I should have said. So it just means I'm starting to spread the placement of the flowers. So it's going to be a tall arrangement. I've got some that are taller than the others. It's not just a bunch of everything put in together so you get this sort of fat head of flowers. What I'm doing is having the bushiness here and then coming down a bit lower. So you get a column of bushiness. So from the edge of the top of the rim of the vase, that's when everything starts to happen. It's sort of like a lozenge of, let's call it a flower. They're not flowers, they're seed heads, but you get what I'm saying. And that's what you created. Instead of having this lollipop effect, where everything's just a cloud of, you know, a little sucky lollipop at the top, you're trying to get this whole lozenge shape of flowers. And once you've got the main stems in, well, you can then feed in a few more just to strengthen it up. So because I'm using these seed heads, it's all a bit wafty. There's no oomph to the little jam jar, the pickling jar at the moment. And also I'm arranging out in the garden, and everything keeps catching the breeze. So I've got about 6 stems in there to try and elongate the jar. So the jar is quite tall, and straight from the rim of the jar, everything starts to balloon out, but I'm keeping it all quite linear. I haven't come out to the sides. We'll do an arrangement out to the sides another time. And then to add some colour in, as I say, I picked my flowers to try and give them the naive simplicity of flowers that you might come across at the beach. And I would be particularly careful, whereas I do sometimes pick from the hedgerows, and I do sometimes pick up pebbles from the beach. I must say, on the whole, that I never really take vegetation from the beach because it's so rare that you get stuff on the beach, and like I say, you just don't want to be picking anything that's protected or you know, is special to that particular location. So I've chosen things that look beachy to me but haven't been anywhere near the beach. And in fact, I could have picked my fennel from the garden. That would have been really good. Our local beach here always has lots of fennel on the beach. So here I've got the tips of my asparagus, and I will take off the lower branches because the same rules apply, that you don't want anything that is green standing in the water, because these little bits will rot, and then that water that's all exposed with your band of pebbles and then clear water will start to go a bit smelly and dirty as these bits of green start to rot. But you could save those and put them into another jam jar. You could have a growing number of jars, and then I'm going to feed that through my support of flowers. I keep saying flowers. I'm saying flowers when I just mean stems. So I can put that right in the middle, and it just gives a bit more definition. So I'm conscious of the fact that I'm arranging against a brick wall. You probably can't clearly see, but I've got my stems going up and then my backbone to my arrangement, and then with the little bits of asparagus fern that's just floating in and out. So that's my linear stuff, my pieces of line material, and then go through. So I only had one piece of the asparagus. Now I'm going to go back in with my cowparsey looking stem. So I've got 2 stems of that. The same thing, make sure there's nothing going to be, no leaves going to be in the water, and also think about anything that looks a bit dry to get rid of. I'm going to divide that stem into 2. So from that 2 stems I picked up, I've got 3 placements, 1, 2, and the third one in front of me. I'm going to start with my tallest one and put that towards the back, and I can start to hook the little flower heads sort of through the stems of the oilseed. So I had one that was, again, tall. All the time I'm putting in something that's tall, something that's a little bit shorter, and something shorter. So I tend to work in 3s, but it's not vital that you do that. But it's just you want to get this gradation in height. I don't want, as I say, this cloud of flower at the top. I want a column of flower. And especially as everything I'm using is quite fine, it'll look great against a really plain wall because you'll see all the beauty in everything. And I do have some flowers which were the yarrow that I picked from the wayside. So these have been standing water, so they've got what a florist would call clean stems. I took off all the greenery from the side while they were having their drink of water earlier. But I will recut the stem just to create this fresh wound. It sounds awful, doesn't it, talking about wounds and flower arranging, but they've been lying on my table just for a few minutes while I've been filming, and even that, the ends will start to dry up, so you always want to have a fresh end. And that is both quite short actually, but because this one's got the bigger head on it, I'm going to put that so it's really low down in my vase. So I'll show you that as I push it in. I'll push it in first of all and anchor it down into the pebbles. So now you look, I've got vase, and then immediately above is the white head, and you can imagine if you had a more colourful flower, like your sunflower, you'd want one quite low down, and if you wanted to go on the sunflower theme and you had loads of it, you could then put a second one a bit higher up, and then the tallest and smallest sunflower at the bottom. So if you are bringing really dramatic flowers into your arrangement, start with the biggest and boldest right low down, then come slightly smaller for the next one, and then at the top try and choose the smallest flower you've got. So it's a bit like when you look at old houses and you see the front door and they all, with the really deep sash windows, and then by the time you get to the attic they're the really tiny windows for the servants. So you need to be thinking that it's all about proportion really, just making sure your eye doesn't think that the flower arrangement is going to fall over. And then I've got these yarrow as well, where the heads are dropping, and I think that's just because when I picked it, possibly when I put everything into my little cup to take water, that perhaps this stem wasn't actually in water, so it has drooped. So number one, you just throw that away, but I always say we'll give everything a chance, so I would give it a fresh cut. So trying to get a nice point. You can see that again, I'm quite sure. That's hold it against my face there. It's like a little point, a little dart. So when you're flower arranging, you just to hold your flowers as if it's, oh, that's probably better, as if it's a little pencil. And a nice sharp cut there. And hopefully those stems will pick up and they'll become more upright. And if they don't, I will just embrace them as a little quirkiness off on the side. So we can never, even though you might have an idea of what you want to do with your flowers, sometimes the flowers don't do what you want them to do. And you just have to embrace it. So don't think, oh goodness me, doesn't look picture perfect. You just say, well, I just wanted that piece that was all lovely and wonky off on the side. So here is my piece that's wonky, and I would justify that by saying it's arching and curving and you know, reaching out to caress the jam jar. So it's all about the artistic language you use. I say it's much the same as if you're going to a fancy art gallery and someone was telling you about their inspiration for the 2 black lines they just painted on their canvas. So you just start to build it up. So I will say that as I pull that through, you won't be able to see very much because everything I've chosen is really fine. So you could use much bolder materials, but I thought I would like to, you know, do something a little bit different because all the arrangement we've made so far have been quite small. So to show you, you can come tall even though you're only working in a jam jar. And then I'm going to put in my hops. So here we are in Kent, the brewing industry, and of course Faversham, we've got the Shepherdine Brewery, so hops are very dear to our hearts here. So this is a hop that was just growing through a hedgerow, and what I could do, you could either keep the leaves on. The leaves are a bit straggly, got holes in them, so you've got the option here of pinching the leaves off and to just reveal the individual hop flower itself, or to keep them on. So again, it's entirely up to you if you pick something that is on a vine, whether you just display the fruits or you keep the leaves on as well. Normally, when I had something with draping, I would have it draping out of my vase and onto my tabletop, but I did think, as we're used to seeing hop vines climbing up the hop poles, that I would actually do is to put it in to grow upright, and that will be really handy with my, in fact, what I'm going to have to do, I'm going to have to take off these bottom 2 because it won't reach into the water otherwise, and I don't want them congesting the water and the vase. That is in water, and then I can get it to climb up through the oilseed seed heads at the end. So you just get this little, okay, you can't see it particularly well. I will take a photograph against a bare wall so you can see it. But I can see these little sort of the bells of the hop flower going up inside the arrangement. So it just adds a bit of, you know, a bit of local interest for me, and it's still keeping it quite low key, so it still looks quite beachy. And as I put that in, that flower dislodged, so if anything like that happens, you just take it out and slide it back in where you want it to go. And then last but not least, this tiny bit of clematis. So there was also old man's beard. It shows we're soon going into autumn. There was loads of old man's beard. I'm not quite sure whether that is the variety that becomes old man's beard or not. But I thought it looked really pretty, but I'm just not sure it's going to work in my jar. What I could do, because it's grown upright, again, I could put it in upright, but sometimes if all your flowers are stiff like soldiers going up, it doesn't always work so well. And I had, when I picked this, thought it'd be quite nice to have it draping out over the edge of the pot. Sometimes, if you're really careful, you can just manipulate the flowers so they take on a bend. Now, the only problem with doing this is if you're really heavy-handed, you'll snap the flowers, and also if the flower just doesn't want to bend, it won't play ball. It'll just be really, really stiff. But it's worth giving it a go. I'm trying to convince myself now that it has got a natural drape on it. And you would then, again, I'm going to have to cut off these last 2 flowers to give me sufficient length of stem that it will feed into the flowers, into the vase. And what I'm doing here, because I know it's quite delicate, and I want it in the side of the vase here, I'm using my hands just to slide everything to one side, and then I've got space to push that in. And I'm absolutely putting it in what looks to be the wrong way round. So all the flower heads are abutting these flower heads. So it's like flower to flower, and then as I release, it sits back, so it's up like that and then sits back to show off. Actually, I quite like that. So what I've got here in my arty-farty language, I would then say that the drape of the clematis here, which is in water, I need to watch my water line, because that's the piece of clematis and it's only just a centimetre underwater. So I'm going to have to make sure I keep this topped up. But that drape out there balances the drape of the fennel, of the yarrow, and we'll just have to see whether it does stay like this and whether it looks like it is drooping and dying or whether it does perk up. But for the moment, the two balance like that. I've got the white centre here, which is what my eye, the focal area where your eye bounces on. And then, step by step, I've got the cow parsley-like flower, and then the, I'm struggling with my names now, asparagus fern, and then the stems of the dried oilseed, which are forming the backdrop to everything, and it's sort of that wigwam where I was managing to weave the hops up and down. So that was the idea, that inspiration for a seaside-based flower arrangement, but the point was really to show you that you can use pebbles to weight down your vase